All right. So Professor MPIM is going to present on the legacy of Dr. Carter G. Woodson. He has been a part of the CCC family for 19 years. He currently chairs the History, Anthropology, and Geography Department. He serves as the president of the African American Staff Association. He hosts a wide variety of community lectures and events. He's deeply involved in original research in Kemet and Sudan. He also does the educational tours, and he apparently has 26 hours in a day. The rest of us are just struggling with 24, because I'm not sure how he gets all of it done, but he does. And so let's give a very warm welcome to Professor MANU AMPIM.
All right, thank you very much. How's everybody doing? All right, excellent. So I have maybe 30 minutes to put in perspective thousands of years of African history and tradition. So I just want to put our theme in context. So Sankofa, celebrating African and African American contributions to humanity in the 21st century. And I want to thank all of my colleagues and students for giving you a very good foundation. So based on where we are in 2025, I wanted to make sure that you know why we focus on African Heritage Month. So before I retire, I want to make sure that everybody understands that we're pioneering. We're making inroads here that's not happening around the country. So before we leave, I'm sure you will understand the vision and the work of Dr. Carter G. Woodson. So I want to go through some information that will help to put everything in perspective. So as Professor Nzinga said earlier, the term Sankofa. You hear about Sankofa, and this is the Sankofa bird. And this comes from the Twi language, which is part of the Akan language family in Ghana. So when you see the bird, you notice the bird is looking back. Not just looking back, but the bird is also swallowing an egg. And the egg is the seed of life. So when you see this, it has to do with us retrieving the past. This is very significant. So you have to go back and fetch it, is what they would say. Fetch what? We have to fetch the culture, fetch the tradition, and in order to move forward, because the day is built on yesterday, and tomorrow's built on today. There's no healthy people that can move forward without a past. This is why we've always said, following Stokely Carmichael or the great Kwame Ture when he changed his name, that if you start your history in slavery, then the best you can be is a good slave. So we're not focused just on slavery. We respect our ancestors who went through that, but there's no reasonable approach to cut off the better part of our experience when we made unique contributions to the world only to deal with our experience on this side of the water. So this is why we decided to choose this bird to represent not only this program today, 26 years, so more than a quarter century, literally more than a quarter century. But in addition to that, it's really to follow the work of Woodson. And I'll tell you that Woodson is one of the greatest men in the 20th century, but he's also one of the most misrepresented men in the 20th century. And we have a lot of folks, it's good to see many of you, students, professors, staff, a lot of elders from the community. But let's face it, most people have not read Dr. Woodson. He wrote over 12 or over a dozen books. We know about a couple, but most people have not looked at the real work of Woodson as he envisioned not just a week in 1926, but he envisioned a whole Black History year. So it was on the 50th anniversary that people finally caught up with some of Woodson's vision, where they made the week into a month in 1976. But we haven't moved forward all that much. So I want to put in perspective why Woodson did his work as a great educator and a great historian and scholar, because he's responding to colonial writers who had all kinds of crazy things to say. Nobody's going to major in philosophy without asking the question, what did Hegel have to say? There's nobody that's going to get a degree in history without asking the question, what did Arnold Toynbee say? And as I'm summarizing here, they claim that Africa had no part of the world, had no history, no developments whatsoever. And Arnold Toynbee, that great British historian, said out of the 26 civilizations since the beginning of human society, the only primary race that didn't contribute to any of them is the black race. And you know what I learned about, where I learned about Arnold Toynbee at? The HBCU, Morgan State University. And I had a very energetic professor. I had a good relationship with her, but when we were introduced to Woodson, a room full of black students, I mean, not Woodson, to Toynbee, we were just told about his 12-volume work, A Study of History. But when I looked at it further, in this 12-volume work, Toynbee said that black people had nothing to do with the development of anything in the world. And so we had to study these people. So guess what? What do you think Woodson had to say about it? You think Woodson allowed this kind of public propaganda to go unchallenged? What do you think Woodson would have to say about that? This was Woodson's response to this kind of propaganda by these prominent scholars. You might say, yeah, but that was some time ago. Not at all. Think about your experience, whether you're a current student or you've been a student. Outside of our Africana studies or African American studies classes, you rarely hear about any contributions of people of African descent. Why is that? So people have to take specialized classes, and this is what concerned Woodson, is that the contributions of people of African descent should be integrated into U.S. and world history, so that every publication, he wanted to put back in the missing pages, the missing chapters, the missing volumes of African contributions to humanity. So this is what Woodson's position was. He challenged this craziness and nonsense with various publications and thorough scholarship. He said, as you can see, publishing the truth is self-defense. How about that? So for him, it was a battlefield. Publishing the truth is self-defense. This is why Woodson published his own work through Associated Publishers. Nobody told Woodson what to do. Nobody edited his work. He did what he wanted to do in the 1920s to create a celebration, even during the heyday of lynching. So as Sister Erica said, that nobody gave us anything. He took it. He took the celebration in the midst of vicious genocidalists. I can tell you that Woodson was concerned about whether or not we can make it through that period. This is why for February, following Woodson, he said that we should not focus on problems, because black people should not simply be associated always with a problem. And so what was the celebration about? To assert our humanity with the achievements, the accomplishments, and the contributions when Africa was at the apex of human achievement. And so we can't always focus on black people as a problem, and this is why Woodson challenged people doing his way. You would be stunned if you heard what Woodson had to say. He said that a lot of the so-called black history programs were a disgrace. They had nothing to do with his vision. He didn't do it alone. His organization was the Association for the Study. Now they've changed it from Negro to African American, but the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. He challenged his colleagues to help amplify his voice, to make sure that this was a celebration of achievements, accomplishments, and contributions, and not simply a problem. Who got beat up by the police? What was the last demonstration? He said that's not what it's about. It's not about individuals, as you saw the slide of Douglass and Abraham Lincoln. But besides, the idea that Frederick Douglass was born in the second week in February 14th, has nothing to do with facts. Frederick Douglass, as almost all African ancestors, were in the same position. He didn't even know what year he was born. He didn't know the day he was born. He didn't even know his daddy. His daddy was probably the slave owner himself. And he had to sneak away from his plantation to visit his mother in Maryland. So this idea of the birthday of Douglass, people just made that up. Yeah, people make things up. That's why we say documentation does beat conversation. Anyway, let me move through this, because why do we call it African Heritage Month? I'm glad you asked that question. Let me answer it for you. It's not just black history, because when people are saying black history, they leave out Africa. Not only that, but we have some strange celebrations that take place. They're very strange. Like at at UC Berkeley a few years ago, they actually had an event during February to honor somebody that was successful in getting some Klan members to leave the KKK. And I said, we don't support that nonsense. This has nothing to do with our heritage and our tradition. This is not a celebration. This is some negativity. And then I saw a flyer where there was a local club. They had a Black History Month special on beer and wine and liquor. Well, they might have had chicken wings too. that might have been discounted. but what does discounting chicken wings have to do with the event? But when you call it Black History Month, anything goes. But let me explain to you why Woodson moved in the direction of African Heritage Month so that you know why in 2013 we made the shift. And when we made the shift here, one of the employees said, "Manu, you know what? Woodson is rolling over in his grave because you changed it from Black History Month to African Heritage Month." And then she tried to soften the email and say, "But I love you." I said, actually, Woodson is very proud that finally somebody liberated his work. That Woodson will be very proud that finally somebody's following his direction. So I listed his books on Africa. I listed his essays on Africa. I listed all these things, and I said, you know what? I love you too. Now take that and read it, and don't make that mistake again, because Woodson is proud of our work. So take a look. Now, you saw this earlier when Erica showed this. This is the first issue of the Journal of Negro History. Now it's called the Journal of what? Of African American History. It's the leading journal among black historians in the country, and it comes out quarterly. And the first issue, 1916. But when you look inside, take a look. You may not can see this, but there are, as you look at the contents, there are several articles dealing with, guess what? With Africa. So this one here, if you can't see it, page 34, the passing tradition and the African civilization. Here's another article, the mind of the African Negro as reflected in his proverbs. And then even some book reviews. This book reviews on the Haitian Revolution. This book review says Negro culture in West Africa. This is the very first volume. There's no time that Woodson and his organization didn't embrace Africa. Why isn't this taught? Because the people that are following Woodson have, number one, they haven't read his work, and guess what? Some are afraid of Africa, let's face it. You have some of the most accomplished scholars in the country, and they avoid Africa. Woodson didn't, but they did. So, but if we're not reading it in the public, we think that those people who are following Woodson are somehow following in his tradition. They're not. By the way, you want to get the current issue of this? So you can't go through Associated Publishers anymore. You have to go through to an outside publishing house, a mainstream publishing house, the University of Chicago. And there was a debate within Woodson's organization of whether or not they should follow Woodson and keep their publications independent or fold and follow the mainstream who've done everything they can to make sure that nobody would ever know about African contributions. So those that wanted to follow Woodson, they lost that battle. So his own organization is not following what he had to do. It's not that they don't know, they know, but guess what? It's very painful to embrace Africa when they too have a negative opinion. And I'm telling you this the same way I would tell them that, because I'm defending Woodson. Remember, publishing the truth is self-defense. And so Woodson has passed away, but his work continues 3/4 of a century later. So the very first, look, volume 1, number 1 is here. You can see it. He's dealing with Africa and his organization. Now, you also saw this. So the journal, by the way, is for scholars. The Negro History Bulletin, now is called the Black History Bulletin, is for teachers. And it was black women teachers that pressured Woodson and the organization to create a publication for them. So the Black History Bulletin is published every month. So when you saw the posters and plays, you would find a lot of that in the Negro History Bulletin. This is the very first issue, October 1937. Guess what? Look at page 6. Do you see it? Or do I need to point it out to you? Is it not obvious? Let's highlight it for you, just in case you didn't bring your glasses or your contacts tonight. So let me highlight it for you, and let me use my laser so you can see. They got Africa in the middle of the page. And not only that, it's not just a map, but but a whole column, what, on Africa. This is the very first issue of the bulletin. How is this left out? The evidence is pretty clear that Woodson embraced Africa throughout his scholarship and his work. So this is why we're following in the tradition of Woodson and calling it African Heritage Month, but it doesn't stop there. So anyway, so both the journal for scholars and the bulletin for teachers, you see the same thing, a focus on Africa, front and center. Doesn't stop there. Let me show you more of why it's called and should be called African Heritage Month. These are 3 books that Woodson wrote on Africa. Not 1, not 2, but 3 books. I want to point out the last 2 books here, The African Background Outline and African Heroes and Heroines. So as Woodson continued to publish his work, he's focusing more and more, not just on general achievements, but specifically about high-level contributions in Africa. It's one thing to just talk, it's something else to prove it. And Woodson began to do that more and more as he went along. These are the last 2 books he wrote. He's focused on Africa. Not only that, you have these 2 books, but guess what? The last series of articles written by Carter G. Woodson, guess what the topic was? Can you guess? It's Africa. There's no question whatsoever. So he didn't just write one essay on Egypt. He decided to double down. Wrote another one on Egypt. Decided that that wasn't enough, so he made it a triple play here. So the last books that were written by Woodson and the last articles written by Woodson were on Africa. Why is this left out? There are biographies on Woodson. There are some credible historians that wrote about the Black history movement, and this is left out. Completely left out. But it doesn't stop there. Take a look at these unpublished encyclopedias. How many of you heard of W.B. Du Bois before? So just 2/3, 3/4 of the room. Can we say that Du Bois was a respected scholar? Yes, very much so. Now check this out. All right, Du Bois was going to create an encyclopedia. So the Phelps Stokes Fund, this is from Carolyn Phelps Stokes. So she got a lot of money from her father. It was a good inheritance. So they gave money to fund a encyclopedia set on Black people. So there was a debate between W.B. Du Bois and Carter G. Woodson about who would publish a definitive encyclopedia to explain the history, the contributions, and the experience of Black people. So this was going to be a 4-volume work edited by Du Bois. He said it was going to be about, he said 500,000 words. So it was going to be a big volume. Now check this out. We all agreed, those of you who know Du Bois, that he is he was a respected scholar, to say the least. Now check out Woodson. Woodson and his organization, the Association for the Study, then it was Negro Life and History, but now it's African American Life and History. They projected to have a 10-volume encyclopedia. Then they scaled it down to 6 volumes. And it was going to be 900 to 1,000 pages per volume. You didn't hear that. 900 to 1,000 pages per volume. Now let me show you the difference between W.B. Du Bois, who was very well respected as a scholar, and Carter G. Woodson. You ready for this? What do you think Woodson would have called his encyclopedia? Folks. Absolutely, you got it. Show you the difference. To show you that it's a shame. It's indefensible that somebody would separate Woodson from Africa. There's no justification for it. Check it out. It's going to be Encyclopedia Africana. Let me explain. My brother, what's going on? Let me explain Africana. Africana, it's not a misspelling. It means to focus on Africa and the rest of the world. That's why we call it Africana Studies. Whereas African American Studies focus on African Americans where? Only in the U.S. It's important, is it not? But it's limited. And by the way, African Studies is a focus on Black people where? In Africa. It's important, but it's also limited. So this is why we don't just focus on African Studies or African American Studies. Those that have the vision of Woodson, who understand that the world is our stage and not localized areas, we're not minimizing anything. I'm very versed in what happens here, but I also know that this is a small part of our history in this continent. So we call it Africana Studies. In the old days, in the 60s and 70s, they would just call it Black Studies, which could be global, or the old timers, and some of you probably represent that, they call it Pan-African Studies. Pan means what? It means all. So you can say Pan-African Studies, Black Studies. We're more intentional, we're more specific, we're more direct. We call it in the same way that Woodson does, Africana Studies. Now, do you see the difference between these two areas of focus? By the way, nobody's going to control Woodson. So he did not allow this fund to dictate anything. They were going to fund it themselves. And Du Bois is very independent. He's in the Pan-African movement, all of that. But you can see, can you all see the fundamental difference in focus? This is the Encyclopedia of the Negro, and this is Encyclopedia Africana. And by the way, this Encyclopedia of the Negro was just going to focus on black people in the U.S., and they mentioned to maybe occasionally say something about Africa. You know what Woodson said? Totally different. The focus of Encyclopedia Africana, guess what the fundamental focus was? On black people, guess where? Can you guess? In Africa. But he also said in Europe, in Asia, and in the Americas. He's looking at a global point of view. He says that. That's what their focus was. It's a true Africana focus. So this is why we call it the African Heritage Month. But guess what? Doesn't stop there. What about the themes of his organization? I'm glad you asked. Let me give you the themes. It's not just Woodson. Nobody makes a great contribution by him or herself. It's always within an organized context. This is why it's folly and it's unwise to always focus just on individuals. So Woodson worked within the context of his organization. These are some of the themes. Now, in 1926 and 1927, apparently they didn't really focus on the theme for the week. But in 1928, they started having themes. Take a look. Civilization and world achievement. They're focused on Africa, even though they don't mention it specifically. I'm simply showing you years where they're specifically focused on Africa. There's some other years where you pretty much it's almost certain they're focused on Africa, but I didn't put it in there till I can look at what was actually presented during that particular week. Check it out. 1933, Ethiopia meets era in truth. That's not enough. 1935, Negro achievements where? In Africa. That's not enough. Take a look. The African background outline. Does that sound familiar? That's the title of his book. And so Woodson, under his leadership, you can see. Now, there's some years in between, so some years they're not necessarily focused on Africa, but Africa's never left out. You get my point? It's always integrated. It's always important, but yet you won't know that today. Woodson passes away, so there's still some influence. Anyway, strengthening America through education in Negro history and, what is it? African culture. His organization, following in his footsteps. So it must have been some students of Woodson that got the message. They didn't drop their books and lose the message. They understood. So look at 1971. African what? Civilization and culture. It's a worthy historical background. We're not doing anything out of ordinary or out of line with Woodson's work and his vision. Can you see the connection? It's obvious. Not only that, but those folks doubled down. 1972, it's very clear. African art, music, literature, a valuable cultural experience. And then guess what? They abandoned the mission. After that, they abandoned the mission, and the last time that his organization, ASALA, had anything dealing with Africa was in 1992. You know why? Because everybody had to deal with Africa in 1992. That was a 500-year, they called it the quincentennial celebration. Quin means 5, and cent or centennial is what? 100. It was a 500-year anniversary since Columbus's landing. So all over the Western Hemisphere, there was this focus on Africa and African people in the world, Native Americans. So 1992, his organization did have a focus on Africa, but not this century. They moved away from Woodson. His organization is the one that sets the theme every year. This year, what's the theme of ASALA this year? Labor. Yes, African Americans and labor. They're never going to deal with Africa. You know who's going to deal with Africa? Those of us who are brave enough and visionary enough to challenge the status quo and embrace Woodson. So I'm telling you right now, in 2025, that we have to be pioneers. I'm going to do it anyway. So I'm on a campaign to make sure that before I retire from here, it's clear, so that they can jam up anybody that say that we want to leave out Africa. So we only put Black History Month like in quotations so that the public knows that we're talking about the same time period when we say African Heritage Month. But that's our primary focus, and it's the premier celebration of all of the groups. So now there's other constituency groups, other groups that have their Heritage Month, but it started long after we've done what we needed to do. So anyway, I know time is moving. Let me just show you a little bit about Woodson's focus on African history and contributions. So it's about achievements, as we said earlier. And that's why he wrote the African background outline. It's achievements, it's contributions. It's, that's his fundamental focus. Take a look at one of the many articles he wrote. You can see it, The Negro in Art, from where? From Africa to America. Can you see the year on the top right? 1939. Yeah, very good, 1939. So in the article, let me blow this part up just so you can see the focus of Woodson. This is what he writes. Sculpture reached its first high level in ancient times under the Egyptians. So we're talking about Egypt right here. The Sphinx near the pyramids of Giza, the Temple of Luxor, the rock temple at Abu Simbel, and the obelisks show the greatness. When you see Egyptian, substitute what? Put African. The greatness of Egyptian architecture and sculpture. So he's mentioning all of these high-level accomplishments, and this is why this intrigued Woodson so much. So if you can't get history straight, you can't get, if you can't get geography straight, you can't get history straight. So we always have to start with geography. So Egypt is in Africa, and I was there, let's see, a few months ago. So, and I was able to verify that Egypt did not detach itself from Africa and float off to the Middle East. I can guarantee you, I documented it, that it was still attached to Africa. Yes, and some of you have gone with me, and you know that you got photographs, you got video footage, and as Kafani said, he's got memory. So you were 16, I think, when you went, right? Yes, so he's still young. I wanted to introduce you to him so we can put him on the spot so he can, but you can see that we're having an influence. And we thank our partnership with the NAACP as well. Okay, so, all right, this is my book, A History of African Civilizations. And this course, AFRAM 210, is also cross-listed as History 110. I titled the book by the same title of the course, A History of African Civilizations. And this here is the greatest builder in the history of ancient Kush. Woodson writes a lot about Ethiopia. When he writes about Ethiopia, he means Kush. This is the greatest builder. This is the builder Taharqa. And these are pyramids in the background. And there's twice as many pyramids in Sudan as there is in Egypt. But this course, by the way, a course on African civilizations, there's just 2. Out of 116 community colleges, it's just 2. Right here at Contra Costa in San Diego City. No other place. But we're the only campus that focuses on African civilizations before derailment, before Africa was derailed. So we don't start with human origins and high-level civilizations and then leap through history just to get to colonialism and slavery. No, no, no. Impossible to do that. These have to be multiple courses, just like you take Western Civ Part 1, and that stops at the Renaissance. Then you have to take Western Civ Part 2, am I right? How's somebody going to fly through the longest history on record in one course? But that's what people do. Now, I'm not simply criticizing San Diego. I appreciate their leadership, but we don't deal with the derailment of Africa. So AFRAM 210 is just African contributions at a high level, and we don't have to guess about it. The evidence is clear. So anyway, so take the course. He's writing about the Sphinx. This is the real name here, Haru M. Akhet. It's the greatest and most well-known, the most famous, and the most powerful statue in the history of the world. You didn't hear me. It's the most powerful statue in the history of the world, the most well-known, the most famous. You should hear the adjectives when people go to see it. They're in awe. You can just stand on the side and record not only the great monument, but what people are saying about it. Yes. So this is the greatest statue on earth. And you see it's right down from the pyramids. You see it right here? Notice this 66-foot high statue, and here's a man to give you some dimensions, 240 feet long as well. Here it is. Take a look at that front view. You see the front view with the pyramid in the back, but you don't often see the side profile view. Even though the nose has been carved off, and Napoleon didn't do it, but it was chiseled off long before Napoleon. But look at what we call prognatism. Look at the lower jaw that protrudes out. Can you see that? This is the protruding lower jaw with the African kissing lips that are right there in front of you. This is a clear African or Africoid image if you look at it from the profile view. Let me give you a close-up. This is the greatest statue on earth. This is why Woodson is mentioning this great, powerful image of an African ruler. Take a look at this. This is on the side, and here is some of the original paint. Let me give you a close-up so you can see. Do you see the original paint? The original kind of brownish color. This is part of the original paint that's now gone. You see how smooth this is? And this is not smooth. So there's been a lot of damage deliberately to the statue, but this is the greatest statue on earth. Now, what about the pyramids that he was just mentioning? This is the oldest of all of the pyramids. This is the first stone building in the history of the world. It's the first superstructure, about 4,700 years ago. By the way, BCE means before the Common Era. You know why? We can't tell the history of the world from a Christian-centered perspective. Most people in the world are not Christians. I didn't say in the U.S. Most people in the world are not Christians. So this is why we try to be neutral in telling the story of the world. So it's before if you see BC, that's old school. Tell whoever it is you need to kind of get into the 21st century and kind of upgrade a little bit, because that's outdated to just be focusing on BC. And we don't use AD anymore either. It doesn't mean after death. It means Anno Domini, in the year of our Lord. It still has a Christian focus. So AD has become BC. Anyway, first, let me just skip through these. Notice the people here. This is the same step pyramid. Here's the builder of the step pyramid. Notice some of you have locks on in the audience. So we appreciate you representing the culture, but you didn't start the locks. Here you got Zoser. You got Zoser. Almost 5 millennia ago, rocking the locks. Not only that, look at the original brown paint to represent skin tone. So this is what Woodson is focusing on. And here you got one of the pyramid builders, Seneferu. He built not one, not two, but 3 pyramids. And this is not medium, this is Medum. And let me show you the 2 pyramids that he built at a place called Dashur. This is the bent pyramid. Notice the shape. You see it has a bent shape? That's why people now call it the bent pyramid. And this is about a 25-story, same height as a 25-story building with the limestone casing. Do you know when the sun shines on this, it's almost like a mirror. Depends on what angle you're at. Take a look at this. This is the true triangular pyramid shape. And this is the north side, this is the opening, so you can actually go in. They call it the red pyramid, but these stones are not red at all. So I don't call it that anymore. I just call it the northern pyramid. Anyway, those are all before the ones in Giza. So if any of you are watching that Ancient Aliens series on History Channel or Netflix, do away with it. It has nothing to do with facts or truth. These aliens didn't build anything. Why would the aliens anyway leave Mars and descend in Africa to build great monuments and then ascend back up to Mars? That's absurd. Africans built this. African stone masons, African blue-collar workers, African managers, African engineers. It had nothing to do with aliens or slaves. This is mythology. So notice the boxes to give you an idea of the height. This one is equivalent to a 48-story skyscraper. And I could tell you a lot. Anyway, millions of stones weighing 2.5 tons. And this is me in front of 1 block. Just 1 block of stone. The engineers were at their best Yes, they were. This is Khufu, who commissioned the building of that structure you just saw. This one here is probably also an image of Khufu, the great builder. This is about 4,600 years ago. This is what Woodson is referring to. He's referring to these pyramids in Giza. I could say a lot more about it, but these are some of the builders here. And take a look at this. Isn't this beautiful? Min-Ka-Ra, and you have goddesses on both sides. What do you notice? Notice the affection. You see the affection? So the goddess on the right, this is her hand. You see that? This goddess on the left, this is her hand. And whenever the king is with his wife, mother or goddesses, you see affection, no question whatsoever. All right, I know time's moving, but anyway, I could say a lot. What I'm pointing out here is that this is the village, Het El Garab, where the workers were located. This had nothing to do with slavery. They were paid for their labor. And I'm at that site right here to verify. We actually snuck in there, and the guardian was upset that he didn't get any bakshish or tip. So I knew the right way to go around. The guardian is looking for bakshish. I said, okay, brother, I said, don't say anything. We got to tip around. He's probably got some dogs around, so don't say anything. I know you see a lot of things around, but don't be in awe. Just take it in and keep it quiet. So that's what we did. Anyway, I can tell you a lot. Let me skip through these, but these are not tombs. You have to go with me on the tour in order to know the details, but look at the math involved. Every side represents a perfect triangle, but they were doing it at a colossal level. You don't think Woodson was inspired by this? Of course he was. How can somebody leave this out just because they're not comfortable with Africa? You saw Woodson's article. He's referring to this level of greatness that's been unmatched in the world. Look at this. Look, those of you who know math, you got to, look at the perfect triangle. That's one, second perfect triangle, a third perfect triangle, and a fourth. Now, if you have 4 equilateral triangles, that means you have what? A perfect square. You missed it. 4 equilateral triangles equals a perfect square. All right, anyway, I can tell you a lot about science. I'm just going to skip through this, but this is what we teach on the tour, that it wasn't about burial, it was about ascension. They were building for eternity. Now, just the last couple things I want to show you is the theft. Any of you been to the Louvre in Paris? They stole the whole design. This ain't original. They stole it. And copying Africans. Some of you been to Vegas? And stole the pyramid, and then the guy done lost all of his melanin. And his racial identity's been changed here. Unbelievable. Can you? and look, you notice something? This one is a close-up of this. This is the same. But there's always balance. You see 2 statues. There should be 1 monument here. And what happened to the second monument? Stolen. And taken to Place de la Concorde in Paris. They even indicate how they lowered it, how they transported it on the boat, and how the theft was taken out to take this to Paris. And what you see here, that's what's right here. It's right by the Louvre. You can walk in 5 minutes. It's all right there. And but there's more of these structures outside of Africa than in Africa. And you see these. So I just want to show you just a couple more. Take a look at this. This is a sacred lake at the Karnak Temple, or at Pet Isut. Do you notice anything on the right? What do you notice? Yes, you see the Tekken, so-called obelisk. That's one. You see a second one anywhere? There it is. Now take a look at that. And looks familiar? The Washington Monuments. George Washington had nothing to do with this. This is cultural theft. That's what it is. You got a obelisk and the reflecting pool, but it's thousands of years later, much, much later. Here's the original, here's the copy, more than 3,000 years later. Okay, so I know my time's up. Okay, so anyway, we can tell you a lot about the science, and but time is on the move, but there's a lot that I can say. But Woodson did mention Abu Simbel. What he was referring to as these statues being lit up 60 meters or 180 feet in the back of the temple twice a year, February 22nd and October 22nd. We don't know for sure, but that may be the day that Ramses was born and the day he became king. But this is science at an extraordinary level. Anyway, So I can tell you quite a lot, but come to class. Yeah, just come to class. You can get the book, and you'll learn about all these details of the first writer in the history, the first book in the history of the world, Ptahhotep, or the first known dentist in the history of the world. That we can at least say that Hessie Ray just came from the barber. This is a fresh cut. Look how smooth he is. Look how smooth he is. Yes, 4,800 years ago, the first known dentist in the history of the world. Lastly, these are the parents of guess who? King Tutankhamun. This is mama, this is daddy. Are they not Africoid? Completely Africoid, to say the least. So like mother and father, you have the son. And this is his golden coffin, 250 pounds of gold. This is 26 pounds of gold. This is actually on his body when he was buried. This is one of his Ka statues representing his spiritual double that protected the tomb. These are all images of Tutankhamun. When you've seen one, you've seen them all. But somebody got nervous. So what they did, they produced a new image of him in 2005. Only thing I agree with is the title of this National Geographic issue, The New Face of King Tut. They gave him a brand new face and took away his identity. Yes, that's what they've done. Someone got carried away and decided to take it to the next level and put on a whole new nose in the fabrication and falsification. This is part of what Woodson was dealing with. So anyway, I could tell you a lot about Kush, but this is one of the statues. But read an article in the Richmond Standard where I was doing field work this summer to learn about Kush. And this is, who is this? George Washington Carver, one of the greatest scientists, to say the least. He introduced so many different crops to help the economy, cowpeas, he introduced peanuts, he introduced many different things to help diversify the economy. One of the greatest scientists, and 300 uses for the peanut. By the way, if any of you, we have some elders, if you have an ailment, take my advice. This comes from Carver. Get peanut oil. You have an ailment, you have something that's not quite right, rub it in 5-7 minutes, 3 times a day, pain goes away. I didn't hear about that. Yeah, because the medical industry is not going to let you get away with a $10 solution when they can charge you more than that. But it was the great Carver that used these things. Here he is, is a man with the peanut. So we can go through a lot of these, many different inventions and different contributions. But at least I wanted to introduce you to none other than the great Carter G. Woodson, Carver. We can mention people in so many different fields. I was going to kind of do a Q&A with you on this, but I know my time is about out. So you can get my book. It's in the bookstore. You can get it. You want to definitely take the class, for sure, A History of African Civilizations. And in addition to that, if you want to take the tours, then you can. We're going to Kemet again in June, and then after that, we're going to be going to Ethiopia. So the district doesn't help us do anything. So what? This is independent work. So join us. You want to learn from the inside, either take the class, you can get the book, or join us on the tour. So thank you very much. I'm Professor MANU AMPIM, and you all are now properly educated about the Dr. Carter G. Woodson. Thank you very much. 42. Okay, sorry.
Okay, y'all know we had to let the professor cook, so we apologize for the time. We're gonna try to get y'all out of here. Okay.